Oh, we're back, refreshed. We are well groomed. Hello, everyone. It's the Pete the Planner show. Dame, I almost forgot the name of the show just then and there. I really did. I don't actually know why, but I almost forgot the name of the show.
If you had to come up with an alternative name for this show, what would it be?
Funny Money. That's a little. Laughs and Graphs. What would you call it?
Moving on.
Two Bald Men or a podcast.
There you go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We took last week off. Why? Because Dame was on vacation. I promised to do a solo show, and then I said, I don't want to. I mean, it really wasn't any more difficult than that. It's like, I'll take a week off. So thanks, Dame, for inspiring my absolute laziness.
It's not that our audience doesn't matter to you. It's just you needed a little break.
Need a little me time. Me time. Dame, how was your vacation? Best donut you had on vacation, what was it?
It was called a vanilla cream pillow, and it was absolutely delicious from a little shop called The Donut Friar, and Friar spelled as in like the religious friar.
Did you do the Duck Donuts down in Hilton Head?
It was closed, Pete.
It closed as in?
It said temporarily because they were having a hard time finding enough staff to run it. So it was no longer serving donuts, and I thought my vacation would be tremendously worse until we found the next donut shop in another place.
You know, I have a hot take about Duck Donuts. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
It seems critical, but it might be. And by the way, I don't want to salt the wounds of a donut shop that is currently shuttered because they can't find staff. However, here are my thoughts about Duck Donuts. They're delicious. They're absolutely delicious. But it is one of the most high maintenance ordering experiences in all of the land of consumerism. It's like, okay, now what icing do you want on this donut and what topping do you want? It's just like, just give me some donuts, bro. That's all I want. I don't want to have to put together a menu, which you have to perform over a 15-minute period. Just give me donuts. That's how I feel.
Last time we were there, they actually had tickets that you would fill out for everything that you wanted and put it in there, and out your donuts would come a few minutes later, and they were worth the wait and the effort in my estimation.
You want to do a financial radio show?
If that's our only option, yeah.
Sometimes it's like we could just get on here and blabber, but then we risk getting bad comments on iTunes about our podcast, which really upsets me. Well, whatever, I don't care.
Clearly,
it used to upset me. I just don't even care. That's a good thing. All right, in 3, 2, 1. This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions. Here's how the show works. You email us, askpete@petetheplanner.com. That's askpete@petetheplanner.com, and here's what we'll do. I don't know. I mean, sometimes we just delete them. Or other times we answer the questions on the show. By we, I mean me. And Damian Dunn, no relation, Vice President of Advice at Your Moneyline and Hey Money. Hello, Dame.
Hello, Pete.
All right, Dame. This week on the show, we've got 3 things we're dealing with. Number 1 is a personal financial question that I'm submitting to the show about my own personal finances. It's a real world scenario. It is not made up. It is true, and I need your guidance. Topic number 2 is, what's the deal with all these colleges and universities forgiving student debt? There's a lot of context you need when you hear or read those stories. And so we're going to provide that context in the second segment. And finally, Dame, in the third segment, we are going to talk about financial optimism, financial pessimism, and financial realism, how your life's outlook impacts your financial life. And of course, the biggest waste of money of the week. And news, Dame, I have a financial question for you that I need your expertise on.
Go ahead, caller. I'm listening.
My trusted mortgage person, advisor, I don't know.
Professional?
Sure. Yeah. She emailed me. She said, Pete, I listened to the show. She does listen to the show. So hello, Jeannie. She said, hey, we've got lower interest rates right now. We've got a special 2.5% on a 15-year mortgage. Okay. So, Dame, I have a 15-year mortgage. I am 6 years into that son of a gun. And so if I went to a 15-year mortgage, it's important to, of course, acknowledge that I would be restarting a mortgage, right? Now, the interesting thing that's happened in the last 6 years is I have aggressively paid down my balance by the nature of a 15-year mortgage. So it's not like I would just be getting 0.5% lower on the original loan value that I had. I'm getting 0.5% lower on a substantially reduced balance because I've been paying off my mortgage. The result, my friend, is there would be a roughly an $800 a month difference on this new mortgage that's being proposed, as opposed to my current mortgage, which has 9 years left to go. So, Dame, here's what I'm thinking about doing, and I'm 95% there. I'm thinking about doing it, then paying the exact same amount, thus increasing my payment by around $800 a month towards principal. And by my math, not only does that save me $18,000 in interest over the next 9 years, but it also allows me to pay off my mortgage roughly 6 months early. And this is heading towards a period of time in which my son would be going into college. And that extra 6 months before he got there, I could use to accumulate some additional cash. And plus, that cash flow would be nice and free by the time he got there. So, beat that idea up, Dame.
When I was alerted that this might be a question yesterday, I started thinking about why would somebody do this for 6 months difference.
Okay.
I think the obvious answer for me is, does that time period line up with a better or bigger use for that money? In your case, yes, it does. If that's the case, I think it makes a lot of sense, even though you're going to go through some hassle of, doing all the mortgage stuff and on and on and on. And it's only going to save 6 months, but it's going to save a big amount of interest. That's for sure. But it does free up some cash for a bigger event in your life as well, a little bit earlier. So even though it seems like a hassle to save 6 months, I wouldn't have any problem with this one.
I'm with you here because, so I've talked about the show before, from a broad stroke perspective, our strategy was to have our mortgage paid off by the time our kids are in college, right? That is our broad stroke strategy. However, when you start to get down to the details of this thing, if that's your strategy, why not do it 6 months sooner, accumulate a little extra ammo there? Of course, like you said, the pain in the neck that it is to do a refi, no matter how great my trusted mortgage professional is, it's still a giant pain in the neck to do all of that stuff. But Dame, we're not talking about saving 6 months and $18,000 over 30 years from now. We're not talking about saving $18,000 in 6 months, 15 years from now. We're talking about doing it 8.5 years from now. Let me tell you, that's going to go fast. And when you put it in those terms, it totally feels worth it.
Yeah, that timetable is ridiculously short for you to be able to recover that much interest cost and 6 months of time. Percentage-wise, that seems to make a lot of sense. And as far as the hassle of going through a refinance, I mean, the kids are home from school now. It's summertime. They can gather some documents and get it in order and send it over.
Yeah, right. I will tell you, I will make you privy through conversations Mrs. Planner and I had about this very topic just the other day, is this idea that I said to her, well, and besides, it gives us $800 of cushion. For some reason, we didn't want to make that additional payment. We wouldn't have to in a particular month. And she said, is something wrong? And I was like, no. She's like, never in our lives have you ever given yourself that sort of wiggle room. So there's no way you would actually do that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't actually know why I said that, because Dame, there is a 0% chance that I would let myself off the hook in a tight month, because the second you do that, that conduit is open and the bad ideas flow through that conduit.
And it's interesting that you said that, because when we have people that are contemplating similar type strategies of what you're doing, and they could say, well, if we don't have the money, we could just drop back to the standard payment.
Yeah.
Typically, we say, yeah, that is a benefit, but you always have to couch it with that very real possibility that all of a sudden you just found $800 or $500 or whatever the situation may be to use towards whatever you want in your month-to-month financial life. And all of a sudden that huge advantage, that reason that you were doing this whole thing in the first place, cracks start to appear in the armor, and you start to put yourself up to being just totally exposed on the whole process and the whole thought and meaning behind it in the first place. So is it an option? Yeah, absolutely it's an option. And it could be really, really valuable if you absolutely need it. And you've got to be able to say no a whole lot of times before you have to say yes.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's one of those things where we do give people that option. You know, we're like, oh, of course, the times get tough. But once you do it, you break that seal. And all it takes, the worst thing is if you pull back that payment for a not so good reason, and then anything theoretically better than that not so good reason is reason enough to not pay an extra $800 a month at that point. I will say, you know this, and you're part of this. Many of our coworkers like to mock me as it relates to my mortgage because I physically drive to the mortgage bank and pay via check every single month. I have never mailed in a payment. I've never made an online payment for my mortgage because I love the feeling. I just love the physical manifestation of owning more of my home, if you will. Like I like the idea of getting the receipt, seeing what the current balance is. I have a whole stack of those receipts, and I look from each month, and I see it sort of like a flywheel escalating, and it tickles me to no end. And boy, do you all like to make fun of me for that, and I simply don't care because it gives me great joy.
Even over the last year, you were able to do that?
Of course. And now I use the drive-through though. So now I'm using a tube to make my payment. I love it. I mean, it is sort of one of my favorite things of the minutia in my life.
And everybody's got their things.
Everyone does have their things. Speaking of things, Dame, coming up after the break, there's a thing right now, and that thing is colleges and universities announcing at graduation they're forgiving the students' debts. Kinda. So we're going to talk about what's going on there. All of that is next on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. Man, that almost was like a really good tease to end. Hello, Jameson. Good to be with you, our friend. I missed you. I've taken a couple weeks off, maybe. I don't know. Dame has. Everybody has. Hello, everybody. So, Dame, I'm going to do that. But it is a giant pain in the to do all that.
Bad. It's not that bad.
I got a lot of stuff going on. Danza says, staff ridicule is the fuel that keeps the PTP machine going. You know, sometimes it does. And that's why I'm so glad we're back in the offices, because I feel like it's just the camaraderie that you can have with people in person, and everyone's back to making fun of me, which is great. And you can do it over Zoom. It just feels mean-spirited to mock a person over Zoom, right, Dave?
Yeah, it doesn't have the same effect on Slack or Zoom or anything like that. You got to be able to look the person in the eyes, or just ignore them, but say it loud enough that you know they hear it.
All right. Special shout out to Gold Star Gale for helping us with this next segment. She sent over an article last night. Did she do that, or was it Kristen?
Yeah. GSG.
Yeah, it's good GSG. She always sends the stories that are on Apple News. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So then my Apple News has to open.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, Gail. Did seem like a complaint. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
In 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner Show. Damian Dunn, listen, sir. I sent you an article earlier this week with eyebrow raised firmly that said small college, small university, whatever, in Ohio forgives student debts to the tune of like $250,000 to $300,000, right? It was not a significant amount of debt to forgive for an entire graduating class. And so it had us digging. First of all, the university is called Wilberforce, I believe is the name of the university. Correct. Wilberforce University, a historically black university in Ohio, announced it would be canceling over $375,000 in student debt. And Dame, there was a video where the speaker at the podium, maybe the commencement speaker, the college president, I don't know, I should know these things, makes the announcement. And as you can imagine, as you would too, the students, the graduates, lost their mind. Were dancing, high-fiving, screaming. Yes, it was a beautiful moment. And we're not critical of that beautiful moment. But there's a lot more details to it, and this is now a trend. Elizabeth City State University is also forgiving student debts. Dartmouth College announced this week that it would be eliminating student loans altogether for families earning $125,000 per year or less. And Delaware State is also forgiving over $700,000 in student loan debt to at least 200 students facing hardships. So why and how is this happening, and what's the catch? Dame, here's the thing. It has to do with COVID-19.
Yep.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah, the federal government ferry went around to some universities and sprinkled some cash on them and said this money has to be used on behalf or in the benefit of the students. And so some of these smaller universities, Wilberforce and some of the others that you've mentioned, are deciding to take it upon themselves to eliminate some of the monies that are owed by the students so they can graduate, so they can get transcripts and their diplomas and all that good stuff and move on. Now, the clip that you referred to, the graduation ceremony, they don't necessarily phrase it that way. And I'm concerned, and I'm sure it was cleared up quickly thereafter, that the fees that are being eliminated are just what the students owe to the university or the college in that case. They're not wiping out federal student loans or private student loans. No, it's a much smaller amount. It's probably going to come up to $1,000 a student or a couple $1,000s a student, which I'm not belittling. That's a significant amount. However, when you hear somebody say that they're going to eliminate student loans, I think we all have one specific thing in mind at that point, and that's a much larger dollar figure for most people.
Yeah, so it's not like the student debt. They're saying student debt to the college, which is not the amount you borrowed from the federal government or from a local lending institution. So if you borrowed $30,000 in student loans or $60,000 in student loans, those aren't being forgiven. It's the fees and fines and debt you have to the university itself, which is somewhat common, but in small pieces. In some instances here, we're talking about parking fines. Mm-hmm. Like if you didn't, I went to Hanover College in Southern Indiana, and the big joke is that, you constantly get parking tickets there because you put on what are called your Hanover flashers. That's where you pull your car up anywhere on campus, put on your hazard lights, do whatever you're going to do, and then come back to your car and claim that you were just, you're putting on your Hanover flashers and you can't get a ticket, but you did get a ticket. And then people couldn't get their college transcripts because they had so much money in parking fines. That's part of what is being forgiven. And again, it sounds like we're being critical of this, and I don't really think I am. I think I just want people to understand that if you're in a commencement address and the speaker says we're forgiving your student debt to the university, don't jump as high, because you may still have $80,000 of student loan debt that you owe, and it just seems insincere to phrase it the way people are phrasing it.
Yeah, I think I sent a follow-up on that with the average student debt coming out of that particular institution was mid-20,000s, if I remember correct.
Yeah.
And if you're that average student, or the student has the average debt, I should say, and you hear the way it was phrased, you're probably having some different expectations than what's actually going to come to fruition. Again, good on the college for using those funds to benefit the students in that way. Phrasing is always important, though.
Another element to this that I think is interesting is part of the Recovery Act, American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion relief package that President Biden signed into law in March. This, like you said, this money has to be spent. It's a use it or lose it. There's something similar going on, oddly enough, at my kids' school. And I don't know the specific details, which I should, but for a significant portion of this past year, school lunch was free because of the rescue plans that were going on. And again, I don't know the specifics. And I feel like that even extends into early next year, where if you, for anyone, student lunch was free, and it's because they have to spend the money they got in stimulus funds. It always reminded me when at the end of a business year, the end of, let's say, end of December, You hear people say that run particular departments, particular companies, oh, I got to make sure to spend my budget before the end of the year. And it's because if they don't spend their budget, not only will they lose that money, but they will also get a lower budget in the next year because they didn't use all their money. And I've always thought that doesn't make sense. Even though that sometimes people are buying our services with that leftover budget money, I've never felt like it makes sense.
I agree. I'm sure there are plenty of accountants that would argue otherwise, that does make perfect sense. However, I just don't see finances working that way in my head, because you and I are tied into personal finances. If we don't spend something, it doesn't mysteriously disappear. It's there for the next purpose or the next reason or the next goal that we need to accumulate. Business finances are very, very different critters than personal finances.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to say I think it is really great and appropriately progressive that schools are looking at ways to unburden these students from student debts. So kudos to all of the universities, colleges we mentioned, including Dartmouth, Elizabeth City State University, Wilberforce, Delaware State, and others. Because Dame, for me, this means there is a trend towards colleges understanding that they are creating some pretty big burdens and it's not sustainable.
Wouldn't that be great if colleges started to show a greater understanding of what they were asking of families, students and their families, to attend those institutions? They provide high quality educations and prepare those individuals for life beyond the walls of that school. But man, there's a high cost to attending that a lot of families just aren't prepared for at this point. Now, there are some great deals to be had out there for school, for different families in all sorts of situations, but it's really hard to find it sometimes. And you've got to really know what you're looking for and how to go about finding those opportunities.
You and I had a meeting this morning about a similar topic for something within our business, and we were talking about there's data that shows you, based on your area of study at a particular university, that you can find what the average income for those graduates are when they get out. And then you can compare that to the student loan debt that it takes to earn that degree. And wow, that's incredibly valuable data that 98% of parents and students never seek.
Wouldn't that be amazing if schools had to send that information out based on your declared major, if you have one, when you enrolled in that school, and how much they think you're going to have to borrow to get out of there? That'd be eye-opening.
All right, so let's do this. After the break, coming back, are you an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist when it comes to your financial life? And based on your answer, how will that affect your financial life going forward? I'm Pete the Planner, and that's what's next. That's what's next. It's a weird outro. What's wrong with me? Dame?
Thought it sounded like a nice little catchphrase that you'd start working in. It's better than stay getting cash or whatever that is.
Stay getting money is an amazing catchphrase. I said at the end of a team meeting on Wednesday.
I was really hoping you were not going to say you said it at the end of a webinar.
Oh, no. No. I was nervous about that college segment because I'm not being critical, but I think details matter. And I don't know. I felt really bad when I watched that video clip and people were going nuts.
Yeah. There's nothing to be ashamed of by those schools for giving those amounts of money by any stretch. But like you said, I think the message was lost in communication between the person who was saying it and the ears that were receiving it, and the expectations weren't going to be met. So all good on the schools that are taking it on themselves to use the monies in this way. Please be careful with how you communicate it.
It's like using a coupon that says buy one, get one free. And then the asterisk says of equal or lesser value, right? Yeah. It's like, just so you know, the second item has to be of equal or lesser value. Important detail. Dame, let's do this. Let's evaluate our life's outlook and how that impacts our finances. That's what we're doing right now. In 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Dame, let's explore how your life's outlook, whether you're an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist, could impact your finances. So let's strip away the financial aspect of it right here, and let's you and I do the best we can to self-evaluate our life's outlook. Dane, when you look at life in general, just in general, don't get too detailed here. Do you view that your outlook is generally one of an optimist, one of a pessimist, or one of a realist? How do you typically look at life in general?
If I say I'm a pessimist, but I believe that's realism, does that count?
You know, it's funny. This morning, I was getting ready for this workday, and I knew we were going to have this conversation, and I tried to figure out what you would say, and that's pretty much exactly what I thought you would say.
Man, am I that predictable?
Well, I feel like I know you very well, and I also know where the second part of this conversation will go, but I have to agree with your own self-assessment of yourself that that's your outlook.
So I have a very good self-awareness. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say this. I am generally an optimist who hedges towards the side of realism, right? If it's a spectrum, optimism, realism, pessimism, I think you are a pessimist that hedges towards realism, and I'm a optimist that heads towards realism, which has made for some really interesting conversations between you and I over the years on a number of topics. Yeah, it's actually, we joked about it a few weeks ago. This is part of the reason you take self-defense courses, right?
Yeah.
And I don't. Is it not?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example of this concept.
Yeah. Okay. So let's extend this to our financial lives and how you think your financial life will go, and then how you act based on that. I will jump in and start here. I am 100% a realist, dead in the center, and I'm curious as to what you think you are.
I would say I'm probably a realist. I think my Mrs. Planner is probably laughing and saying that I'm not.
She's saying you're a pessimist with that too?
I bet she is.
So here's where I'm going with this. I think if you don't check yourself, if a person does not check themselves when you transition from your life outlook to your financial outlook, you can very easily ignore mathematics. I'm a realist because my own financial plan depends on math. That's it. And if I'm not on track towards something, I don't care what my feeling is because the math tells me what to do. And I find that oftentimes if a person is an optimist, here's what they won't do. They won't buy life insurance. They won't have the proper amount in an emergency fund. They will buy very speculative investments that mathematically don't make a lot of sense over the long term. Or if you're a pessimist, you never get into the market. You just got a lot of money in cash. You don't experience life. You don't go and spend your money or find opportunity that exists because you always assume whatever kind of looks like opportunity, that it's not really an opportunity and it would never work out for you. So that's why I feel like I'm on this quest to create realists when it comes to people's financial lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. There's an interesting comment in our feed right now from Levi that says, I want no part of an optimistic financial planner. I have to agree because we hear those on, at least at one point, we would hear those in our channels when you were a financial planner, Pete. You get market outlooks, and typically there'd always be, things are going to be good next year, and the 5-year outlook is great and fantastic, and da-da-da. And rarely in the professional side of things was anybody ever going to lean towards, nope, things are going to stink next year. You just had this always rosy glasses tint type of perspective that was being pushed out to financial planners. in my experience, I think most financial planners are more realistic, more realists, and because of if you're gonna hook up your wagon to a pessimist, you're asking for a lot of indigestion if you're gonna work with them professionally. So I think you're right. I think realists need to dominate this marketplace, and then individually be real with yourself and figure it out. Either, as you say all the time, either you're on track or you're not. And you have to come to terms with that. Are you going to be able to fix that or correct it and get yourself on the track? Or are you going to have to figure out some other way to adjust expectations and goals to meet that?
Yeah, see, I like that you just agreed with my point, and I'm going to agree with your point of you agreeing with my point.
Yeah.
Right? If you find out you're on track or off track, your reaction to that tells you whether you're an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist. If you're a realist, you do something about it to change it. If you're an optimist, you go, it'll work itself out. If it's a pessimist, you're like, well, that's just the way it is. And that doesn't work. I know we're dealing with behavior, and I know we're dealing with emotion, and I know we're dealing with simply a resource. It's math. And this is not to say it's not hard. It's very, very difficult. But this is what I would hope people would understand. Now, I know, and Dane, we talked about it again before the show in our pre-production meeting. There is a moratorium on this show on a particular topic that we've talked way too much about recently. And so I'm not going to say the words, but I want to talk about it for cryptically. There's a certain type of investing going on right now that people are really into and people love to talk about and tweet about and all sorts of things. That goes beyond optimism. It is financial optimism in the purest and grossest form because there's not a lot of sensibility to it. And see, I think that's what makes me so frustrated is that you've got people that could otherwise create some structure, they could put in the work, and they could still get to a reasonable outcome, but they're just choosing blind optimism towards something that they don't understand. I think that's the summation of my feelings for that topic we're not talking about.
I won't mention anything, but I do have a question for you in the time we have remaining. A certain type of person, let's say that they are reluctant to do anything financial, basically a head in sand type of person. They don't want to evaluate anything, no net worth calculation, no power percentage, no anything. They're certainly not realists. Mm-hmm. Would you tend to label them as optimists or pessimists, or
depends?
I hate depends as the answer there, but I think you're right.
Yeah, Levi, who is always so good to be part of our Facebook live stream on Fridays at noon Eastern, notes, I guess I'll just work forever, is pessimistic folks looking at underfunded retirement accounts. And that is 100% the truth. Those are the bumpers for me. I guess I'll just work forever is one. And the other side of that, the other end of the spectrum is it'll work itself out. It actually won't. And that's that sounds like pessimism. No, that is realism. That's where I get frustrated about this sort of stuff because we're not trying to shame people to do anything. It's just there's so much fluff in the media and social media and culturally. Just having an honest conversation with people to say, look, you can't beat math, bro. You can't beat math, and that's what this is about.
I guess I'll just work forever could be a very realist statement depending on the age of the person that's making it.
Yeah, you know what? That is fair. Yeah, maybe that's the ultimate point here is you can still save yourself from that phrase up until a certain point, and then it just goes over the cliff. Man, guess who's a Dunny Downer today?
Both
we
of us.
are.
Yeah.
All right, Dame, coming up after the break. Biggest waste of money of the week. It's a good one, I think. I think you're going to like it. I really do. And then, of course, current events in which we will not talk about the subject of the things we're not talking about. All that is next right here on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. All right. I feel like we've done a pretty good job not talking about the topic we're not talking about.
Yeah, I don't think that topic needs any discussion because that topic has been played out and too many other people are talking about that topic.
There are a couple things I wanted to talk about with it, but I'm not. Okay, next. Oh, biggest waste of money of the week in the news. You got your current events pulled up?
Of course. I think it's my first show.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Danza says, I come from pessimists. I'm a realist, but lean towards optimism to counter my origins. You know what, man, there's a lot of truth in that. How the outlook of the people who raised you, and yeah, that's interesting. Now I'm trying to think of how I would view those around me. Mrs. Planner tends to, and she would admit this, she tends to more have your sensibility around sort of pessimism.
I would have guessed that.
Yeah. I would think your Mrs. Planner would slightly be somewhat in that range too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe optimists are just dumb people. Like maybe I'm dumb and that makes me an optimist.
You know what? I will recant that. I think it depends on the topic for a lot of people.
Sure. That's why that general outlook versus finance versus like health or spirituality or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. You ready to go?
Yes.
I am. In 3, 2, hold on a second. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. This week's biggest waste of money of the week right here on the Pete the Planner Show is every week we have a BWOM, biggest waste of money. It is generally a consumer product in which if you bought it, probably wasting your money. This week it's the Spyratwo water gun. When the Spyro 1 appeared on Kickstarter in 2018, it set a new standard for water guns with bullets of fluid and a digital readout of how many shots remained. The Spyra 2, what did I called it the Spyratwo, but it's actually Spyra 2 because I can't read. Oh boy, what a moment. The Spyra 2 builds upon the same basic design. It can hold 22 semi-automatic blasts of water per fill with a range of 30 feet. A 3-second hold of the trigger releases a 46-foot blast, and it will automatically refill in just 12 seconds when dipped into a water source. The rechargeable battery of the Spyra 2 lasts for 90 refills or a total of 2,000 blasts. Dame, do you ever want to take a guess of how much the Spyratwo water gun costs?
I am going to say $169.
$159.
Oh, man.
Is that not one of your finest guesses ever on this show?
That's a good one.
That's fantastic. Good on you, sir. Okay, here's the thing. I get it, but who is this for? It's for like fraternity guys is who this is for.
Lake bros, fraternity guys.
Lake bros.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong. Both your TD and my TD, our young sons, would love this, but neither you or I would spend $159 on a Spyratwo water gun.
No Spyratwos in my house. Not even the first one.
The good news about this, and I do have it on our live stream right now. I have a picture of it. At least it doesn't look like a realistic gun that can cause, sort of community issues. It is
looks like a gun out of Halo.
Sure. Dame, what's in the news this week?
Pete, a story near and dear to my heart and kind of a callback to an earlier conversation. Krispy Kreme filed to go public this week under the ticker symbol DNUT, which is beautiful. Consider this a comeback tour because when the 83-year-old chain first went public in 2000, it filed for bankruptcy just 5 years later. Wah, wah. That was back when carbs became public enemy #1. You may recall.
I do remember. It was the Atkins craze that killed the donut shop.
Yep. But after being battered and fried, Krispy Kreme was picked up by a European investing firm, Jab Holdings, and glazed back to glory. Some notable stats from Krispy Kreme's SEC filing. U.S. sales grew 17% in its last fiscal year. Net revenue jumped 23% year over year, which I think is fabulous. The chain expanded its footprint from just over 6,000 Krispy Kreme selling locations to 8,275 last year. A lot of need for donuts in the pandemic. And 64% of all Krispy Kreme donuts sold are the glazed kind because that's the best flavor.
I know you love donuts more than just about anything. They're a 10 out of 10 for you in terms of food pleasure. Where do you rate a really good New York bagel?
Why bother with a New York bagel when you could have a donut?
They are sort of like sad donuts.
Yeah.
I love a good New York bagel, though. I mean, donuts for me are also a 10. A good New York bagel is also a 10 if done right.
Yeah. I'm not as cultured as you in Central Indiana. I'm up somewhere else.
So my son used to love pudding when he was a kid, and then he was introduced to yogurt, which he started calling sour pudding, and I think it was the funniest thing in the world.
That's awesome.
It is sour pudding. It's like, yeah, yogurt is sour pudding.
It's perfect.
It is beautiful. What else is in the news?
Let's talk about 3 stats that illustrate the travel industry's rebound, Pete.
Okay.
American Airlines expects 47 of its top 50 corporate accounts to start traveling again this year, in a promising sign for business travel, per the Wall Street Journal. Think that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
TSA screened nearly 2 million passengers at U.S. airports on the Friday before Memorial Day, the most since the pandemic began. And Hilton's CEO said that Saturday night of Memorial Day weekend was the busiest its hotel's events in the COVID area. 93% of all its rooms were occupied.
I miss a good early morning frisking at a random airport.
Yeah.
The
Somebody's
best-
hands that are still cold.
Yeah, here's the thing. Sometimes I'll just leave stuff in my pockets just so you ensure the frisking. And the best part about a good frisking these days, in the modern era of frisking, is that you get the back of the hand, and they somehow think that that's not as intimate as the palm of their hand, and they will still frisk you. And it's like, it's just a nice bit of warmth when you're on the road away from your family.
Yeah. Well,
I can't tell whether I'm joking or not right now. I think that's where I've just come to terms with that.
you've got a little while before you have to come face to face with that situation again, though.
I am on a plane July 17th.
Oh, I guess I didn't realize it was that soon.
And, I've been meaning to ask you. So I don't remember when this was. It was within the last year. You and I said, what we're looking forward to. And I think you said 4th of July weekend. This was a while ago. You were like, I'm going to be watching Top Gun 2 at a movie theater. And we sort of had, and then I was just like, man, you know what? I cannot wait to see that movie. Do you know if it's coming out on the 4th of July weekend or not?
I think it got pushed back again. I'm not 100% sure, but we will certainly have our research department get on that right after the show.
We absolutely will. Yeah, Dame, lots of flights coming up. Start in July and then it's sort of nonstop through the end of the year. I guess you and I haven't even talked about that. So
what if you could watch Top Gun 2 on your flight?
I would have to know if there's any crash scenes. I was on a flight once and someone was watching Castaway. The horrible scene with the crash, the FedEx plane crashes, Tom Hanks, and like right in front of me is watching this like on an iPad, and you can't take your eyes off of it. It's but it's a crashing plane when you're on a plane. It's like, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, you don't watch Jaws when you're out in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Right. Just watch like Boogie Nights or something more appropriate for a flight.
Totally.
Yes.
One more travel story here. United Airlines plans to buy 15 supersonic planes being developed by Boom Technology, hoping to resurrect high-speed flights more than 2 decades after the method of travel was grounded. Pete, would you fly on a supersonic plane if you could afford it?
Jeez. I don't know why I wouldn't, but I would also have to have a need to get somewhere in a supersonic, they're for transatlantic flights primarily, right?
Concorde was incredibly loud and incredibly cramped. And so they tried to make you satisfied with the whole experience by giving you great food while you were on board, which I think would appeal to you. But yeah, the speed and the cost. I think a one-way ticket right before they shut down was like around $6,000 to get across the Atlantic for some destinations, which seems like a lot of money. So.
Live stream viewer Matt R tells us not only is Top Gun coming out November 19th now, but he also makes the very important point of who's going to fly on a plane called Boom. It's a really good. This plane was manufactured by Crash Industries in conjunction with, oh no. It's like, why would you do that?
By the way, Boom Technology has not built any of these planes, and they hope to have a scaled down version in the air, possibly by the end of this year.
You know, I have to say, as a former business traveler who will likely travel a lot again, one of the pleasures for me after a long day is sitting on a plane, maybe enjoying maybe a cocktail or something like that. Well, maybe even sitting in first class because I have enough points to do that, or I have enough status or whatever. I think like those experiences are sort of out the window right now because there's not a lot of food or drink service at all. And several airlines have suspended alcohol altogether because of people slapping each other in the teeth.
Yep. Some people would ruin it for the rest of us.
Oh, go figure. It sounds like that's how it's always been. All right, Dame. That's all we have time for this week. Thank you for your efforts. I've got a business development meeting with the team. We brought in pizzas, some za. I'm going to go do that now. Sending you good vibes because good vibes are all that's in the budget. I'm Pete the Planner. That's Damian Dunn. I am done with the show. I had bad timing there.
I actually had a real financial news story that I should have. Should we just do it special for podcast?
Yes, but hold on. Levi says, speaking of travel, Pete, did you see my message that your podcast was Mrs. Listener's choice of soundtrack to Hawaii's most scenic drive? No, I did not. I'm off social media, so unless you got that to me via skywriting, I have no idea. But thank you, Levi.
Yeah. I'll make this short. Ally Financial said Wednesday that it is ending overdraft fees entirely on all of its bank products, becoming the first large U.S. bank to end overdraft fees across its entire business.
I think it's great.
Yeah. Overdraft fees, by the way, predominantly impact Black and Latino households, which are a big reason of why a lot of households choose to be unbanked. And so they're hoping to draw people into a more traditional banking structure by making it a little bit more accessible and less of a penalizable situations for them.
Penalizable?
Well, I was going to go with penal, but I thought that might not be a great way.
Oh, never go with penal on this show. Dang, that's all we have time for. So, hey, everybody, just want to let you know we appreciate you listening. Sorry we were gone last week. Actually, not that sorry. But we're back. We'll keep doing it. And remember, stay getting money.